Everything happened so fast. I didn't even fully understand what I was feeling or what I had done. The more I thought about that moment, that minute, the guilt inside me kept growing. Maybe talking about it will ease the burden, or maybe it'll make everything even messier, but this secret feels way too heavy to keep inside. The truth is, I'm ashamed to even talk about it, but it feels like the only way to finally let go of what's been haunting me. That evening, my mom was at the office again. Everyone knew how much she loved her job. Being Victoria Marshall meant being hardworking, responsible, and always in control. My mom worked as a procurement manager at a big company, and she often stayed late at the office. Some nights, she didn't even come home. Her passion for work had always left me feeling a little lonely, but for him, this was just normal. That evening, it was just Ryan and me at home, my mom's new husband, the perfect guy. 45, muscular, well-groomed, and a human resources manager. To others, Ryan might seem handsome, kind, and charismatic, but that night, he was so much more in my eyes. As for me, I'm Ava, 23 years old and in my last year of architecture school. My life has always been neat and under control. Thanks to my love for sports, I've always stayed in shape. I'm the captain of the university volleyball team, which gives me a bit of a special status, both among my friends and in how I see myself. I like to take care of myself. My hair, my skin, my clothes, they've always had to be on point. I thought of myself as strong, disciplined, and organized until that night. Things weren't supposed to happen like this. That night started off like any ordinary evening, but it didn't take long to realize there was nothing ordinary about it. If you enjoy listening to stories like this, make sure to subscribe to my channel and watch this video until the end. Trust me, this is a story you don't want to miss. That evening, I had prepared a nice dinner for my mom and Ryan. My mom had come home early from work, but I can honestly say she didn't lift his head from his laptop the entire time. Even when we all sat down for dinner, she kept checking notifications on her phone. That's just my mom, dedicated to his job and known for his discipline. But I couldn't ignore the distance between her and Ryan. Things had started to shift a year after they got married. Ryan is calm, mature, and romantic. I know that about her. In fact, when he and my mom first started dating, we used to talk a lot about those qualities of his. But now, it's impossible not to notice the sadness in his eyes. At dinner, everyone complimented the food. Even my mom, in between hurried bites, managed to say sweetly, "This is amazing, Ava. Thank you." But before dinner was even over, she grabbed her bag and said, "I've got some things to finish at the office. I might be back late," and left. When Ryan shut the door behind him and came back to the table, there was a tired look on his face. Quietly, I started clearing the plates while he poured himself a glass of water and stared out the window. Something felt off. Ryan usually carried such positive energy, but tonight was different. After I finished the dishes, I went into the living room. Ryan was sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the dark TV screen. I sat down next to him and softly asked, "You okay?" He seemed startled for a moment, then turned his head to me with a faint smile. "I'm fine, Ava. Just a little tired, I guess." But from his eyes, I could tell he was saying the opposite of his words. The silence dragged on. stretching between us like an invisible thread. Feeling a nudge inside me, I said, "You know, Ryan, I'm not used to seeing you like this." He paused for a moment, then took a deep breath. Some days are harder than others. Victoria's job, her passion. I get it. I really do. But sometimes, I don't know, I just feel a little lonely. His voice cracked just slightly. I never expected him to admit something like that. Ryan was always the calm, collected, and strong type, but in that moment he was so human. All I could manage to say was, "You're right." The weight of the moment shifted the atmosphere in the living room. The silence. It felt like it was both separating us and somehow pulling us closer at the same time. I wanted to help him, to make him feel better, but how? After my mom left for the office, Ryan had put on a movie in the living room. He was stretched out on the corner of the couch, lazily flipping through channels with the remote. His eyes were on the screen, but it was clear his mind was somewhere else. Without saying anything, I headed to the kitchen. I decided to make some coffee, not because I really wanted a drink, but because I didn't want him to feel alone. A few minutes later, I came back into the living room with 2 mugs of coffee. "I made one for you too," I said with a smile. He looked up, a little surprised, then smiled softly as he took the mug. "Thanks, Ava. That's really thoughtful of you." I sat down on the opposite end of the couch. There were a few cushions between us, but even being that close to him felt different. On the TV, a romantic movie was playing. I had always known Ryan was a romantic guy, but it caught me off guard that he was watching something so cliché. I smiled slightly. "Didn't peg you as someone who watched these kinds of movies." He shrugged. "Sometimes. They're good for taking your mind off things," he said, setting his mug on the table. "Besides, a little emotional moment here and there isn't so bad, right?" As we got into the movie, the conversation started to flow. We commented on certain scenes, laughed occasionally, or debated the characters' choices. Ryan's calm, deep voice and the way he gave me his full attention stirred something strange inside me. The scenes in the movie somehow made the quiet moments between us feel even heavier. At one point, I felt his gaze on me. At first, he didn't say anything, but I noticed him trying to look away. That's when I realized I had unconsciously crossed my legs, causing my short black shorts to ride up a bit. My tank top, thanks to the way I was sitting, clung tighter than usual. As I tried to adjust myself subtly, I couldn't help but wonder if his quick glances meant something or if I was just imagining it. In that moment, even though he didn't say a word, the faint look in his eyes, both excited and unsettled me. Combined with the romantic scenes playing on the screen, the air in the room grew thick. I tried to seem calm on the outside, but inside, I was a mess. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "I think I'm getting a bit tired. I'll head upstairs and get some rest," I said, abruptly standing up. Ryan tilted his head slightly and said, "Of course, Ava. Good night." But there was something hidden in his voice. As soon as I got to my room, I shut the door and took a deep breath. My heart pounded in my chest. What I had just felt, the subtle tension between us, scared me. I couldn't fully define it, but I knew I needed to escape those feelings. I lay down on my bed and closed my eyes, but his gaze wouldn't leave my mind. Even after retreating to my room, Ryan's presence lingered in my thoughts. The scenes from the movie, the strange tension between us, they kept replaying over and over in my head. Ryan. The more I thought about how perfect of a man he was, the deeper my guilt grew. When he married my mom, everyone knew he was romantic and loyal. He was the kind of man who brought stability, discipline, and a sense of safety into someone's life. For a man as hardworking and busy as my mom, Ryan was like hitting the jackpot. But at the same time, I couldn't help but notice how physically attractive he was. Ryan's broad shoulders, his charismatic gaze, and that calm smile that appeared when he talked. It was hard not to feel something, even for someone like me. Those glances I noticed during the movie, the way something shifted between us. I was almost certain he noticed me too. The more these thoughts invaded my mind, the more I felt both guilty and strangely excited. I was mad at myself. I shouldn't feel this way. It wasn't right. But the quickened beat of my heart and the fluttering sensations rising within me silenced any logical thoughts. For a long time, I hadn't realized how much of an impact Ryan's presence had on me. Now, it was all too clear. That night, I eventually fell asleep amidst these confusing thoughts. Even in my dreams, his face was there. When I woke up the next morning, the shame I felt was overwhelming, but getting rid of these thoughts seemed impossible. As days went by, things between Ryan and me began to change. On nights when my mom was at work, we often ended up alone together. Our interactions became more familiar, even if unintentionally at first. I was shy and uneasy, but Ryan's calm and friendly demeanor put me at ease. Every time I looked at him, I felt a spark inside me. With every passing day, I found myself more drawn to him, and at the same time, I hated myself for feeling this way. I was almost certain Ryan noticed the shift too. Those moments when our eyes met, the subtle electricity I felt, it sent storms through me every time. Knowing he noticed me too made me happy in a way, but it also terrified me. And then that night finally came. My mom was at the office again for another late meeting. The house was quiet, just like that first night, but this time there was something else in the air. A tension, an anticipation. My heart raced, unsure of what was coming. That night I couldn't sleep. My thoughts bounced back and forth between Ryan and the strange feelings I had for him. My heart pounded wildly, and the chaotic emotions in my mind felt like they were pinning me to my bed. Realizing I wouldn't fall asleep, I decided to get up. I was wearing my favorite red lace satin nightgown. The thin, soft fabric felt like a gentle caress against my skin. It was past 2 a.m. I quietly made my way to the kitchen, thinking maybe a glass of water would help. The moment I stepped into the kitchen, my breath caught in my throat. Ryan was there. He was the kind of guy who was usually asleep before midnight, but tonight was different. There was an empty bottle of wine on the table, and he was pulling a second one out of the fridge. He wasn't wearing a shirt. His broad, muscular back was bare, and with every movement, the muscles in his shoulders flexed. Under the dim kitchen light, the lines of his back looked like a sculpture. I couldn't take my eyes off him. When Ryan closed the fridge and turned around, he noticed me. "Ava? Couldn't sleep?" he asked, his voice tired but calm. I tried to pull myself together. "Yeah, something like that. Why are you still up?" I asked, leaning against the kitchen counter. He gave a small smile and held up the wine bottle. Sometimes you just need to clear your head. Drinking alone gets boring, though. Care to join me? I hesitated, but I couldn't say no. Sure, I said, and as he poured another glass, I slid into the chair beside him. At first, we talked about random things, small talk. But as we emptied our glasses, the conversation grew deeper. We talked about my mom, Ryan's job, life in general. I was reminded once again of how mature and calm he was. His openness put me at ease, and before I knew it, laughter was filling the quiet kitchen. "These chairs are kind of uncomfortable, aren't they?" Ryan said after a while, his gaze sending a small shiver down my spine. "Want to move to the living room? It's more comfortable there." The thought of being alone with him in another room sent a ripple of unease through me, but I nodded. We got up and moved to the living room. Ryan settled on the couch and I sat down next to him. The space between us shrank, both physically and emotionally. The wine had left us both a little tipsy. My eyes kept drifting to Ryan's strong hands, the faint scruff on his face, and the way he carried himself with such confidence. He was looking at me too. Long and meaningful. "Ava," he said, his voice low. At that moment, my heart was racing so fast. Everything around me felt like a blur. Looking into his eyes, I whispered a few shaky words. "You're really handsome," I said, my voice trembling, "and perfect in every way." The pull I felt toward him grew even stronger. My eyes locked with his, and slowly I rested my head on his shoulder. For a moment, maybe longer, it was just us. Nothing else existed, just us and that moment. Ryan gently rested his head against mine, and we sat there in complete silence for a while. Then our eyes met again, and we were so close, neither of us could look away. And then everything burst open. I couldn't stop myself. My lips brushed against his, fearless and soft. Then again, deeper this time, a kiss full of passion. We took a step further together without needing a single word. When Ryan's hand rested on my waist, a warmth spread through my entire body, shaking me to my core. Within seconds, I found myself in his arms as he pulled me closer. My breath caught in my throat. There was excitement, but also hesitation. Yet in that moment, it was just us. As Ryan's hand slid down from my waist, I felt every motion ripple through me. Tilting my head slightly, I leaned in, too close to resist him anymore. In the heat of the moment, I kissed his neck, the soft touch of my lips sending waves of sensation through me. That moment was beyond everything. Nothing else mattered. We were just living in it. My body melted into the heat of Ryan's hands. Each move he made seemed more deliberate than the last. My hands wandered over his shoulders and neck, trembling as the intensity of the moment consumed me. Being this close to him, feeling the desire in every touch, left me completely intoxicated. Ryan's gaze bore into mine, deep and intense. In that instant, the rest of the world faded away. When my hands finally gave in and wrapped around his neck, I felt him even closer, filling every inch of space between us. When Ryan's arms tightened around my waist, pulling me firmly against him, everything else disappeared. My doubts, my fears, my hesitation. I was consumed by one overwhelming need: to be with him, My lips found his again, and as our kisses deepened, my body refused to pull away. Every touch, every movement made me feel as if my entire soul belonged to him. Ryan's hands moved with certainty and intention, and I matched his pace, drawn to him with equal intensity. Our passionate kisses erased all distance between us, and in my mind there was only one thought: to feel this, to be his. After what felt like hours, I opened my eyes, restless and unable to sleep. Tossing and turning in bed, I finally glanced at the clock. It was nearly 4 a.m. In the dim light, I saw Ryan moving quietly, slipping out of bed and gathering his clothes from the floor. My vision was still hazy, my body drained, the wine still lingering in my system. I lay frozen, watching as he disappeared into his room. My gaze fell on my red nightgown, still lying crumpled on the floor, a silent reminder of everything that had just happened. A heavy wave of exhaustion settled over me, and my thoughts swirled with the chaos of the night until I eventually drifted into unconsciousness. When the first light of day crept into my room, it took everything in me to open my eyes. My head pounded, my limbs felt heavy, and my mind was clouded from the wine and the memories of last night. Then it all came rushing back. Ryan's hands, his lips, the way he made me feel, the intensity, the passion. It had been beautiful, but now, in the daylight, all I felt was shame. The nightgown still lay where I had left it, the red satin and lace shimmering like a cruel reminder. I quickly grabbed it and shoved it into my closet, as if hiding it would somehow erase what had happened. But the chaos inside me only grew stronger. What had I done? I needed to escape those thoughts, even if only for a moment. I grabbed fresh clothes and hurried to the bathroom, desperate to cool down. Each step sent flashes of the night before racing through my mind. Ryan's warmth, his lips, his touch. But now guilt pressed down on me, suffocating me. The night had been intoxicating, but in the harsh light of morning, it felt like a disaster. As I stood under the hot stream of the shower, I let the water wash over me, easing the tension in my muscles, but doing nothing to ease the weight inside me. When I stepped out and stared at my reflection in the mirror, I saw exhaustion in my eyes and guilt that refused to fade. Taking a deep breath, I steadied myself and headed toward the kitchen, where I heard voices. My mom and Ryan were having breakfast. They smiled at me, but their smiles didn't bring me comfort. Instead, they added to the suffocating weight pressing down on me. The moment felt surreal, almost cruel. "I'm not hungry this morning," I muttered, my voice hoarse and shaky. The emotions I didn't want to name were bubbling inside me. Guilt, confusion, desire. Nothing felt the same anymore. The room filled with an awkward silence, heavy like a cloud, pressing in on me from all sides. Later, as I passed through the kitchen on my way back to my room, my eyes flickered toward the living room, and memories hit me like a wave. The way Ryan looked at me, the way we kissed, the way I followed him to my room. My chest tightened as I thought about it. It was strange, yet in a way it had been magical too. I felt torn, drawn to him, yet terrified by my own emotions. The turmoil inside me only grew stronger. I couldn't take it anymore. Staying here in this house with these feelings was impossible. I knew I had to do something. I thought long and hard, trying to figure out what to do, and finally I found my answer. I couldn't stay. I needed to leave. Determined, I packed a few of my things, shoving clothes into a bag with shaking hands. I didn't know how to explain it to anyone, but I didn't need to. This house, this life, it wasn't for me anymore. I had to save myself, and leaving was the only way. If you've made it this far, I know my story has hit you hard. There's so much more to share, and you won't want to miss a thing. Hit that follow button, turn on your notifications, and don't forget to leave a comment about this story. I can't wait to hear your thoughts. Let's talk in the comments. Your support means the world to me. I thought I was living a normal marriage until one day, while I was cleaning, my stepson and his friend suddenly showed up at the house. The silence filled the room as I bent over to wipe down the big white couches. Then the door suddenly slammed open. I jumped for a second, still hearing the vacuum running, so I couldn't immediately see who it was. When I turned my head, I saw my stepson Liam and his friend, who was dark-skinned and athletic, standing in the doorway. Liam, my 19-year-old stepson, looked nothing like his father. Unlike his dad's strict demeanor, Liam's young face always had a touch of mischief. His hair was dark brown and his skin looked tanned, like it had been kissed by the sun. His friend, Noah, had a similarly relaxed energy, dressed a little sloppy but exuding that carefree vibe that came with youth. "Mom." Liam's voice was surprised but carried a soft smile. "What are you doing here at this time?" Liam's voice snapped me back to reality. Without realizing it, I turned off the vacuum and stood up. The strap of my tank top had slipped off my shoulder, and as I noticed, I quickly tried to adjust it. But when I felt Noah's gaze on me, I suddenly grew a little embarrassed. I could feel my cheeks burning. "I was just cleaning," I said, trying to hide the surprise in my voice. "Why are you guys here so early? Aren't you supposed to be at school?" Liam ran a hand through his hair, laughing casually. "We left early today, wanted to hang out with Noah, but I didn't expect to catch you like this." Noah stepped forward slightly, giving me a faint smile as his eyes quickly scanned me. I felt a bit uneasy, but at the same time, that look wrapped around me like a strange curiosity. Liam's presence next to him was more innocent, but the depth in Noah's gaze, as if there were things left unsaid, made me feel a little uncomfortable. Liam shrugged and said with a casual tone, as if it was nothing, "I knew I'd find you cleaning when I got home, but I didn't expect you to look this good." His eyes sparkled with a playful gleam. Noah, while taking off his shoes, interjected with a surprised smile. "Liam, is your mom really 42? He asked, raising his eyebrows. In the brief silence, I heard Liam chuckle lightly. "Yeah, Noah, why? Does she look old to you?" Noah's eyes roamed over me quickly before he replied, "Definitely not. You look so young and really attractive." His voice carried a sincere and soft warmth. At that moment, I became aware of the thin fabric of my top and the leggings, accentuating my body's curves. With a shy shrug of my shoulder, I said, "Thanks," an involuntary smile forming on my face. Liam and Noah went to the living room and turned on the PlayStation, lounging on the couch as they got lost in the game. Seeing this as an opportunity, I continued tidying up the rest of the living room. I grabbed my dust rag and started cleaning around the TV. As I wiped the sides of the television, I glanced out of the corner of my eye and realized that Liam and Noah were watching me. At first, I felt a bit uncomfortable, but deep inside, I couldn't deny that I liked the attention. I suddenly felt younger, more attractive, but not wanting to dwell on it too much, I pulled myself together and went to the kitchen. After a while, Liam came into the kitchen under the pretense of wanting coffee.